Good morning and welcome to our devotions for today, Tuesday. Trust that we all had a peaceful night and we are prepared for all that this day has to offer us. As we come into this time of devotion, I want to invite us to bring into our space all those persons who are going through any challenges in their lives, especially those who are really close to us, those who mean a lot to us. These are some very challenging times for many persons. The whole experience of our pandemic has been stressful in itself, and that has been added to all the other things that we were going through before. And it isn't everyone that has the same resilience to be able to cope. And so I want us to remember persons that are going through some really challenging times and bring them into our hearts of love and see how we can perhaps offer them some solace, some strength at this point in time. So I want us to take some time now and find our quiet place, both a quiet place externally and a quiet place internally, so that we can prepare ourselves for this time together. Good morning, greetings. And so we greet each other, but more especially we greet those who are there for us, those who in so many ways guide, direct, and assist us from day to day. We acknowledge your presence as we begin this time of devotion. In our tradition, we speak of the communion of saints. We speak of those who have gone on, but who are there for us, offering us guidance and assistance in our daily lives. We give thanks to Almighty God for all that God has done with us and is doing with us, even in this moment. And we ask the Divine Presence to be with us in a special way. And so we begin by coming into our heart space and acknowledging the love of God. Really acknowledging the love of God. As we take a few deep breaths into our hearts and bring ourselves into that tremendous place of peace, that inner chamber that Jesus speaks of. And no doubt he himself would have used on several occasions. A place of inner dialogue. So we take some breaths into our hearts. And we acknowledge the benevolence of the one who's called us into being. We offer gratitude, tremendous gratitude for the blessings that we receive. To look in this moment beyond any challenges and just lift up the blessings, lift up those things that we can be tremendously grateful for. And feel that love which has come to us in several ways. Those in our lives who bring us tremendous love, who set us aflame with their presence. Just bring that attitude at this point in time into your heart. And allow it to rest there. Feel the expansion in our hearts. Feel the wonderful stillness. Know that God is. God is working His purpose out in our lives, moment by moment. And with that love energy building in our hearts, let's think of someone or someones who we know are really having a serious challenge at this time. And let us intentionally send our love and our light to that individual or to those individuals. Just sending them love and light. Knowing that we may not know all the circumstances, we may not know all that is involved, and we don't have to. But we send them what we can, what we have at this moment. And what we have at this moment is love and our light. And so we send that to them, asking that it may be used in the best way possible to assist them in their journey. Just imagine that love and light being transferred from you to that person. And just see the person being encircled by your love and light. See the person being blessed by your gift. See them being lifted up. O ever-loving God, who today calls us to abide in the eternal bosom of love, we offer our thanks for a new day and a new opportunity to correct the wrongs of yesterday. We ask continually for your guidance and thank you for your steadfastness in not leaving us, but constantly molding and shaping us into what you know us to be. As we begin this week, we ask that you go before us and provide us with a path to follow. May your messengers be ever patient in showing us the way, and may we, day by day, desire more and more to listen and follow. Amen. Our reading for today is taken from John's Gospel, the 7th chapter, reading verse 53, continuing through chapter 8 to verse 11. John chapter 7, verse 53, continuing through to chapter 8, verse 11. Then each of them went home, while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and making her stand before all of them, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away, one by one, beginning with the elders. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again." Here ends the reading. Oh, still, small voice of calm. Such a beautiful hymn there. Dear Father, dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways. One wonders at the thoughts that might have been going through the mind of the hymn writer. But it is clear that he somehow grasps a very important message. He understood how so oftentimes we act from a place of folly. And that place of folly can at times seem to be a righteous place because we are following the rules. We're doing what the book says. This morning's reading just shared is a wonderful example of this. And I want to just pull out a few words from this text this morning that I want us to really sit with during the day. And the words are these: "And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him." And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. When I reflected on those words, for me it spoke so highly of a truth that we often ignore. And we ignore it because it is perhaps a part of, according to the hymn writer, our foolish ways. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing beside him. Now, it is interesting how there are two things going on in this particular passage. One is the fact that this woman had committed adultery. And the second is that Jesus was being tested by those who brought her into the arena where he was. And the gospel writer opts to focus on the fact that Jesus was left alone, when the main thing of the day actually was the woman who had committed adultery. But the gospel writer, when he phrases this sentence, he doesn't say, "And the woman was left alone with Jesus," but that Jesus was left alone with the woman standing beside him. And I find that to be interesting because the gospel writer wants us to focus on the test that they brought to Jesus. And as usual, Jesus prevails in their test. But as we understand that, I want us also to take a look at the woman in this story and see where she was. And where she was in relation to where those had accused her were. She was standing beside Jesus. The others had left. She was standing beside Jesus. She was with Jesus. Isn't that interesting? That the one who you would least expect to be in the presence of the Lord is in the presence of the Lord. And the ones who thought themselves to be justified because they knew the Lord were nowhere near the Lord. And again, as they abandoned her, having brought her there, she was not alone. The gospel writer says that Jesus was alone and the woman was beside him. But the woman was no longer alone. The woman was with Jesus. And this is important, because what it says is that in the midst of our challenges, when everyone else deserts us, God doesn't. God is ever present. When those who have accused have done their worst, God is still there with us. God is always with us. Now, we can't be followers of Jesus and just interpret this passage for ourselves from the perspective of that God is always with us. We also have to recognize that, like Jesus, we embody the divine presence. However little or great it might be, we embody the divine presence. And so we have a task in the world to stand by those who are accused, those who persons seek to condemn. We have a task to stand by them. The folks in this story realize that Jesus, because of his compassionate heart, would not have condemned the woman. They knew that. They didn't figure out how he was going to get out of it, but they knew that their plan, or at least they knew that they could count on him not condemning. And they figured that the only way he could do that was by ignoring the commandment. So they felt as though they were in a good place now to bring him to disrepute. But when you are in the Spirit, there's always a way provided. There's always a path that no one else sees, but you do. Remember, the passage deliberately begins by saying that when the others had gone away to their homes, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. And no doubt would have spent considerable time that night in prayer. The ability to follow Jesus is no little task, but is one major ingredient, and it's a life of prayer. We have belittled the prayer. We have made prayer functionary as opposed to something that we engage in. We need to restore prayer to its rightful place as the fodder, as the food, as the nourishment for the spiritual path, for the path of ascension. The winds will rage around us. The storm will be its mightiest. But if our lives are rooted in prayer, we will see the way forward. This woman came under the shelter of Jesus' love. And Jesus was able to offer her that shelter because he had surrendered himself to the Spirit's guidance. And with that guidance, he could not be touched. Nothing could have power over him. So this morning, this passage offers us a few thoughts to reflect on. It reminds us of the importance of being people of prayer and giving ourselves over to prayer. It reminds us that in great times of danger or oppression, God is always close by. And it tells us that when we are people of prayer, God always provides a way through the crowd, a way through the aggression, a way of peace, a peace that passes all understanding. So therefore, carry these thoughts and whatever other thoughts Spirit would have raised in your hearts today, and allow them to bear fruit. We must desire our own transformation, which is possible only when we put what we have heard into practice, into action. For the word tells us, "Fear not, little flock, because it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. He desires to do this. So therefore, let us do the work necessary in order to make this a reality. We will, by God's grace, find a way forward through the darkness.